please be full of yourself. Who else are you supposed to be full of? You are a creative spirit in a human body. Use the human body to write the story. Use the human body to make the art. You exist to create. So fucking run with it. Hey, sunshine. Welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Creative. Did you know that the average person has 60,000 thoughts per day? I can't tell if I think that feels low or high. I think it feels low to me. Average 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And once in a while, you get a real fucking banger. Like, you have an amazing thought and you're like, holy crap, that's good. I should do something with that. Yeah, this is why I have so many notebooks in my house. And also, I'm a real quick draw with my phone and the notes app. My notes app has so many just random things in it. And sometimes I never go back, but sometimes I do. So what I want to talk about today, I call it the shower thought. So when it comes to creative projects, books, epiphanies, these are things that normally happen when we are doing something routine, like walking the dog, driving the car. You ever have just like really good, deep, like holy crap level epiphanies while you're just driving somewhere? I do a lot of voice notes when I'm in the car. So when you are doing something, also taking a shower, like that's why it's here. That's why I call it the shower thought. Because when we are doing something that is automatic in our conscious mind, that means that our unconscious mind can do a bunch of other stuff and make creative connections and do magic. So we're free to wander, process, expand our thoughts, and just sort of let the neural pathways have little adventures in our mind because we don't have to think about stuff. So I had a friend once who referred to this as her Bitcoin processor. She's like, yeah, just sometimes I'll think about stuff and then like a few months later, it comes out fully solved. Like I had a problem, I just let it in my brain for a while, never consciously like dealt with that problem or worked through it or anything, but just naturally over time, the connections in my brain spat out a conclusion, a solution to the issue. And I call this the shower thought because the idea for my novel Lepidoptera came to me when I was in the shower. I actually turned off the water, wrapped myself in a towel, and like still soaking wet, like ran down the hallway into my bedroom to grab a notebook and a pen so that I could write this down and not forget it. And my one shower thought was the idea, what if you could go back in time and change one thing in your past? And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And like immediately now there's implications. So once you have the shower thought, then you can spiral into a beautiful mind map of chaos and imagination and like, how many directions can this go, right? So eventually I got to a point where it's like, okay, you can't go personally back in time because obviously the temptation to just keep doing stuff would be too great. So there's some sort of like trained agent who will go back in time and interrupt this certain event in your life and will change it for you. And then I'm like, okay, there's like some time agents in like Gravity Falls, right? Which is like a goofy cartoon that is not a goofy cartoon. It honestly has a lot of very deep themes. I love cartoons, by the way. Cartoons are great. So I'm like, okay, we have like time agents. So there should be like a temporal like logistics department because we also need to know if you change that thing in your timeline, is that going to create ripple effects that affect way more than you were aware of? So this has to be like a very, very involved process with lots of like counseling and interviews and like security to make sure that a thing that you are changing does not completely explode the whole world, right? It's my one shower thought. And I wrote the first draft based on that shower thought. And then I went through it. I hired a book coach, and my book coach is like, what are like the government implications of this? Like the government knows about it. Is it like legislated? Do they have to report anything? And I'm like, okay, so should this be like a seedy underbelly thing? Should this be off the books? The world building that comes off of your one single shower thought can go in 1,000 different directions. Then it just grows and grows and grows. if you listen to the last episode, you know that you can do like a kind of a base outline, which is what I did. Very basic. I was like, okay, so here's what's going on. Here's how the time travel device works. I want to open on this scene. Here's sort of like the twists and turns, and I want some betrayal, and I want some of this and some of that. And everything that I wrote was good. Like, you could follow the story. I had a friend read it and they were like, I want you to write another book. Like, this is great. And then when my coach read it, it was, it felt offensive at the time, but now I absolutely see what they meant, which is that like, sometimes I would just put like surface level stuff in there. Like, it just felt like kind of a basic teen arguing with their like big sister. And it was like, oh, you never let me do stuff. I've always trusted you and now I can't. And it's like, we haven't seen any of that trust on the page, right? Which again, your first draft only needs to be about 30% good. So then you get to go through and refine it. And I'm like, okay, maybe they're not sisters. Maybe it's like an aunt and a nibbling. The younger character is non-binary. And honestly, I don't like the word nibbling because it sounds like eating. I'm like, this sounds like a fried corn cake to me, a nibbling, but I don't have a better word. But if you have one that's better than nibbling, can you please tell me because I need it? So anyway, this all started from one thought, one shower thought, which is usually like, what if? What if you did Mad Max in space? That can be your shower thought. What if we lived in a world where whatever, invert trope here, like, seriously, it all starts with the shower thought, with like the one thing of like, oh, I should write a book that's like about this thing. That's all you need. You need the teeny tiny little kernel, the teeny tiny little piece that will generate books, series. So in the now like third draft of my story, there is a private investigator, a murder mystery, a cover-up, betrayal, found family, connection, forgiveness, and it's really becoming a lot more coherent and cohesive. And it's been through so many different iterations where I'm like, oh, I'm going to make this happen. And then I'm like, no, that doesn't actually work. So we got to walk it back. But it has always remained true to my shower thought. What if you could go back in time and change one thing in your past? What happens then? What are the implications, right? So I was like exploring like how trauma affects the brain. Would the brain still have traumatized stuff if you removed the thing that caused the trauma? Would that change your life to the point that you actually, as the future version, are not allowed to like consent to that change because it would change your life so much? Like, it started getting like medical. I need like time travel HIPAA involved. And no, just what if you could go back in time and change one thing in your past? Amazing. The implications are phenomenal. So now I'm finally closing in on like the version of this story that will tie it together in a neat little bow, as neat as a time travel, like 3 POV story can be, which is not neat at all. It's still very chaotic. But like, this shower thought thing happens all the time. It happens to me all the time, at least. And I think a lot of my clients have this sort of like, well, what if I did that? Or for me, poetry pops into my head almost like fully written. Like, I will get a complete line of poetry, even sometimes the whole poem altogether. And I'm like, oh shit, like I'm getting a poem. I just get a poem from the universe. I thought I was crazy. It turns out that actually is a thing. Elizabeth Gilbert writes about it in Big Magic. There was a person who, I forget her name, but I'm going to look it up and I'll put the story in the show notes. A person who would just like feel a poem coming, and she would have to like drop whatever she was doing, run to her house and grab a pen to write the poem before it left her. And sometimes she would even have to like pull it back into her. And in the one instance where it was like almost gone and she like pulled it backward into her mind to capture it, she wrote it backwards. Like, she wrote the poem backwards because that's how the idea came to her. Like, and that's how that creativity came through her. And so I'm like that with poetry, and it sounds weird, but if that happens to you, please tell me so I don't feel so alone. The title of my memoir came to me suddenly as I was walking my dog. It's called Fat Like Grandma, because my mom always shamed me, and she was like, do you want to be fat like grandma? You know, if I was like, can I have seconds on dinner because I'm still hungry? You're going to get fat like grandma. You're going to get fat like grandma. And like, now I am fat like grandma and I'm living my best life. So that's what my memoir is going to be called. And I would love to tell a story about my client, Evan, who has created this epic, incredible, genre-bending, alternate universe fantasy that is going to be at least 3 books. I can already see it like as an HBO series. He is on the precipice of something absolutely like world-changing with this book series. No pressure, Evan. And it all started because he was pissed off at the last season of Game of Thrones. And his shower thought was, what if Game of Thrones, but just one competent person who actually talked about their problems? And thus spawned an entire world, a universe, a post-apocalyptic United States, Midwest Rust Belt, post-nuclear atrocity, the moon is in half, monsters live under like the surface of the world level, like epic fantasy. Because he was like, no, they did Game of Thrones season 8 dirty. And then he just went out and wrote something better. No offense to George R.R. Martin. Like, it's not Game of Thrones, but it was inspired by the rage at the ending of the Game of Thrones TV series. And it's just been incredible to like read this and be like, I can't believe you wrote this out of like that tiny kernel of being like, what if in this fantasy where everybody's super murdery and there's kind of magic and there's evil and there's war and there's stuff, kings and queens, like what if somebody was just a competent little guy who was like, maybe we should talk about this kind of stuff. Incredible. 10 out of 10. Love it. Love the shower thought. And also I would just like to share a little bit of feedback about and from Evan, which is that he had worked on this book, this draft for like on and off for maybe 4 years before I got to him and absorbed him into working title writing incubator. And he can finally like talk about the fact that he's writing a book without feeling like he needs to go throw up. So that is the best testimonial I could ever give you, is that I will make you not feel like throwing up when you say I'm writing a book to your coworkers and your friends and your mom. So he like was at the point, he's like, I don't know if this is really good. I don't know if this is just self-indulgent. I don't know if this is going anywhere. It was just sort of in a drawer and he wasn't sure about it. And he was considering giving up. And then now he is just about done with his revised version and ready to start querying agents. And I think that like 2024, he's going to get a book deal on this thing that he wasn't even sure about, on this thing that started with one little shower thought. And I need you to hear me that like, whether it's writing a book or it's art or it's just quitting your job and doing something better, like you are allowed to act on one thought that feels like it came from the universe for you. That's life-changing. That's amazing. And I want that for you. So I'm going to wrap us up here. I really just wanted to tell you about the shower thought because I don't think I've talked about that before. So that is a concept. One of my favorite things to explore because it's like, yeah, you're allowed to start and outline a book based on like one kind of cool idea that you had in the shower or while you were driving, or you watched a movie and you were like, well, that was cool, but what if they did this instead? And suddenly now you can create an entire world based on what if this thing instead. I love it, honestly. It's so powerful when we can let ourselves just have an inspirational thought and then act on it without being like, oh, me, am I the one to do this? Yes, that's why the universe gave you that thought. That's why that idea came to you. You're not being selfish. You're not being self-aggrandizing. You're not being like so into yourself and self-important and self-absorbed. Like, also, like, please be full of yourself. Who else are you supposed to be full of? You are a creative spirit in a human body. Use the human body to write the story. Use the human body to make the art. You exist to create. So fucking run with it. 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. When you get that one that feels like you've been struck by lightning, go do it. Do the thing. Okay. All right. I love it for you. I believe in you. Please stay hydrated. And say hi to your pets for me and tell them that I love them. Oh, and before you go, we've got something that's going to take your storytelling game to the next level. My novel parkour challenge. It is free and you do not want to miss out. Picture this: 5 days of high-octane writing adventure where you'll sprint through the twists and turns of crafting your novel outline. We're talking about diving in headfirst into the world of storytelling where your creativity knows no bounds. And we're not getting hung up on perfectionism either. Novel parkour is ideal for ADHD and ADHD writers out there because we keep it fast-paced, surface level outline so that you do not need to get bogged down in the nitty-gritty details before you are ready to actually start writing. This is all about unleashing your creativity without overwhelm, making it the perfect playground for boundless imagination. So head on over to the website askfishfisher.com, sign up for Novel Parkour, the 5-day challenge, and I will see you at the starting line. As always, I want to give a shout out to my amazing production team, the Pancake Copycats. They specialize in marketing support and podcast support for neurodivergent entrepreneurs, as well as songwriter Ashton Powers, who wrote and performed my opening jingle. See you next time.